Perhaps the first time we heard about gamification was on How to Save the World Using Multiplayer Games by Jane McGonigal's speech. One of the gamification precursors through her book, Reality is Broken. This Institute for Future researcher said that it was necessary to keep playing multiplayer games for more than 20,000 million of hours in order to fix the most important problems on Earth, like poverty, starving, climate change, war, etc. The game is, pointed by Wisinga and Neidler-Calvat, a non-productive activity according to a capitalistic way of thinking. Monetization, products, or even goods are not produced by the act of playing games. Then gamification is in the opposite way, saying that we have to convert every non-productive effort from game on a new motor power capable of changing the world. Zuckerman has commented that in tactical terms, gamification can be thought of as using some elements of game system in the cause of a business objective. Gamification is being used to create experiences that use the power of games in spheres as diverse as human resources, healthcare, finances, government, and education. On the other side, Shell states that the gamification is taking things that are not games and trying to make them feel more like games. In this regard, there are so many samples in so many sectors also, from education to human behavior, biomedicine, etc. Making a review, I can tell about the interesting proposal by fan theory, which usually are involved on improving behaviors on such as most healthy, civic, and respectful ones. Another project called Mapani tries to mix loyalty program with current spending on mobile calls from developing countries' poor area in order to give them clean water resources. The fifth example is Folded, and this is an online game about manipulating biomolecular structures, and thanks to this game a lot of HIV research have been produced. The last one is a game called Play Spain, an urban ministries of Durham and McKinney marketing agency collaborating on which, as a citizen who earn almost $1,000 a month, you have to resist social exclusion through very difficult decision making. However, these are not the only cases about gamification. Gamification is a powerful tool and can be used in a lot of ways. For example, today, both of military and video games industry share a lot of information about technology innovation, as well content, real mission, etc. For example, we could say perhaps a good video gamer pilot needs a few training lessons in order to pilot a real combat drone. Besides, both graphic interface from Drone Cop Kit and Combat Flight Simulator games are almost indistinguishable. Workplaces gamification has had many phases. We all know every try of introducing games, elements, or playgrounds in order to turn these workplaces more pleasant and desirable. All the same, a very rigid work schedule doesn't allow to use this in workplaces playground. Another workplace gamifications try to stimulate workers to improve their efforts and results even when this kind of gamification could be counterproductive, or when we use gamification before trying to solve real problems, real workplace problems with more resource, or improving communication with workers. When I wrote my article about gamification on Zachariason and Wilson's The Video Game Industry Formation, Present, State and Future edited book, I took the chance of create a gamification taxonomy, dividing it into three kind of gamification: natural, the technological, and forced gamification. All of them were related with all of 3% ludic matters: cultural, technological, and economics aspects of today's games, respectively. A lot of gamification's elements, as mechanic, achievement, and goals, have evolved thanks to new and digital technologies. Despite this, I like to turn back my attention to traditional ludic mechanic, used to achieve improvements on health, intellect, and work fields. That's because I wanted to propose some kind of everyday problems to face in order to break the system rules. The first of all problems is about my father's reading lag. When I lend to my father a book, I can see the bookmark is at the same place for a long period of time. How can I help him to read more? The second problem is about kid smoking. Some friends of mine are a smoker, and even when they take a look of the very disgusting image on the cigarette box cover, they don't feel the necessity of quit smoking. How to help them to quit this unhealthy habit? Third is about our personal tasks. Even when I got a lot of task management software, it's hard to choose which task I should to start. How can I help myself this way? The fourth is about food wasted on flights, restaurants, or trips in general. And the fifth and final one is about a situation with the fiscal manager of my own company in the past. In order to know the satisfaction level of our clients, he sought to do a lot of paperwork, even when we use a powerful ERP tool. How can I use technology or gamification in order to help him to do this job fastest as possible?
Man, you fucking won. Took about 3 or 400. Hey, all in the game, yo. All in the game.
6 of most famous 21 IMDb sentences from the Wire TV series mention the word game.
If we're going to play, you'll have to start. But they disdain the game and those who play it. You enjoy the game.
I do. Last thing I expected.
And you play it well.
I'd like to keep playing it. If Stannis breaches the gates, the game is over.
So many times TV series, characters, politicians mention the word game. Even well-known films like 1983's War Game mention game as something pretty serious. Less known games as Jogo do Bicho, the game of the animal in Portuguese, despite its legal questions, proved to be a powerful tool with also serious political and social structure influence in a huge country as Brazil is. Human beings introduce ludic or playfulness on every aspect of our life, even death, from the beginning of human history. Pretty close life conception, we use sexual toys. For example, dildos are dated 25,000 years before Christ. That means they're older than agriculture. There is a very funny and illustrative example on our film, for example.
Es decir, el ganador se lleva 60 millones. ¿Conoce las reglas?
¿Quién no conoce la tortilla rusa?
Alem, por favor.
Bien. En el plato de la derecha tenemos un ejemplar de la deliciosa seta amanita cesárea o yema de huevo. Y en la izquierda tenemos 4 ejemplares de la manita faloides, o cicuta verde, mortal de necesidad. Ahora voy a elaborar 5 tortillas, una con la cesárea y 4 con la manita faloides, que ustedes van a degustar voluntariamente. Buen apetito.
Bien, el juego es bien sencillo. El jugador que permanezca entre nosotros se llevará los 60 millones. Suerte, señores, y buen provecho. Les recuerdo que son libres de abandonarlo. Solo pierden su dinero.
Yo hoy no tengo apetito, gracias.
Bien, solo 4 tortillas.
Y piensen que solo una es inofensiva.
Y voilà.
Puedo empezar. Siempre me ha gustado ser el primero. En todo. Esto lo hago por vicio. Estoy podrido de dinero. ¡Hijo de puta! Lo siento. No es nada personal. Es que soy alérgico a las setas.
Salud, señores.
Bien, caballeros, deben decidirse.
¿Qué gallego? ¿50%? Venga, come si tienes huevos. Come, cabrón, que las posibilidades son las mismas. ¿Dónde se ha visto comer sin pan y vino?
Here it's a kind of Russian roulette modification called the Russian Omelette, using poisoned omelettes instead of guns. Examples like Russian roulette or the Russian omelette show us how even on deadly situations we introduce playful elements. Take your time and think about the different kind of physical and mental energies are needed to do every activity. Thanks this map, I like to show a kind of cartography of how we use both mental and physical energies on every human situation. On the top right, the red area, we have very extreme situations as warfare, martial arts or high-level sports. Another activities like heavy vehicles driving are in the middle. Road construction work use more physical energy than mental. Computer design, play video games or chess, artistic painting require high doses of mental but a few of physical energy. And finally, watching TV, listening to music or sleep require the less of both types of energy. Which is the relationship between these human activities map and the game? I like to draw a parallel between some ludic, leisure and work activities from the past. When the Basque Olympic Games, both of Harihassoitzale holds a big stone and Aizkolari split in half a log are representing a metaphor with Neolithic origins. Archaeological records show the large amount and size of the stones used in the construction of Neolithic houses and the use of wood for internal furniture, structures and roof. I believe these concrete games are a way to turn a job into a stimulus to compete and improve tasks within a community. A kind of mental and physical improvement to better something that help us and help the community to survive. The game has been evolving from these more concrete and utilitarian schemes to others that are more relaxed and abstract and not so directly related with only work purposes. For example, card games reached the top during the Renaissance. The free mention of playing cards in Europe dates back to the 13th and 14th centuries, and it's so postulated that were introduced in Europe by the Crusaders from the Far East. Card games are a clear example of the penetration of other kind of entertainment, less physical but mental and social. In any case, the seriousness of these games depends largely on the application that they have in a more or less literal life support sense and on its role in the mechanism of survival. This way, I think it's interesting to create a kind of thermometer that goes from the games played for pleasure or leisure to those used in education. The art graph or civil works, and finishing with the exercise of the military. First place puzzles or card games are more abstract and are played just for pleasure, meanwhile primitive games like stone hauling or wood chopping are more serious and related with social construction. Finally, the most concrete military simulations are of principal importance and seriousness because it's a kind of ludic exercise of life and death. That because I consider gamification as a natural and native process in the beginning of human history, and perhaps prior to culture. We gamified our sexuality, construction and destruction of our societies. Playing games has had a pivotal role on educational and work always. This way, during our childhood, we played ludic simulation with their own badges in order to feel closer from adults' tasks. Thanks to simulation, we become aware of the necessity to expand information about those tasks through oral or written education. Then we transform our ludic activities into work or craft activities. My theory is this occurs innately since the beginning of times until the industrial era. On an history of children's play and play environments, Joey L. Frost speaks about very important change from the end of 19th century to the beginnings of 12th century in the USA. For example, massive displacement from country to urban areas, the growth of large production factories, institutionalization and centralization of education, etc. And how these factors influence the culture of children's play. In the subchapter Victim of a Stolen Childhood, we find the efforts of reformers to reroute this fourth urbanized childhood, youth victims of a strong cultural shock. Of course, the culture of play also suffered greatly. On the one hand, the factories and chain work, contrary to what happened with traditional jobs, prevent unproductive presence of children in their facilities. That is, the child was in factory because he or she was working and never playing. On the other hand, the work in the factory used to be a very automatic one in every way. Usually, it was required to learn a single and very limited task belonging to a production chain of other similarly matching and limited tasks. Thus, we move from the traditional work and crafts, almost artistic, where a large amount of knowledge was needed to perform or complete a product, to learn a simple mechanical gesture that require not a great expertise. The ludic start to lose making sense because they work at the factories. On the other hand, the training spaces and specifically schools also began to look more like factories than recreational and community environments where children and teenagers practiced very close to the adults in the community to which the children belonged, the games to learn. In modern schools, play games was removed in order to mechanize and automate learning and reshape future generations of workers and factory workers. To make matters worse, in the 30s of 20th century, became popular the most passive and individual leisure hobby, the television. TV eliminated social and abstract playing, the way of playing just for fun or being accompanied by other people. So, on every human activity, from pleasure for the pleasure until the exercise of military acts or through the educational and civil works, the game was losing ground in favor of the new industrialization and more specifically the Fordism. We attend an unprecedented and gamification process during about a century. Birth and forge such a young country like the United States is clearly linked to its industrial concept, the work of the factories, and more specifically to Fordism, without realizing, by the way, was almost completely eliminated this native gamification. That is, those countries and areas with high industrial presence were ungamified. After the summer of love and psychedelic explosion of new ideas, both the USA and in other developed and westernized countries, began to happen a number of matches which would transform the role of play and game in society. The beginning, in 1970, Clark C. Abt published Serious Games, a declaration of intent on the usefulness of games in educational contexts and how we should transform the classroom to not look like a student factory. Later in 1972 is released the first console called Pong. This game hardware parasitized television so that it ceased to be a passive hobby tool and became an active one. In 1973, USA proclaimed the abolition of conscription, demilitarizing much of the US population and changing welfare and welfare status. In 1974, the board games and civilized world games played by retired military clubbers suffered a major change with the intervention by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson on the first RPG, Dungeons and Dragons. This is the ancestor of a genre which will be digitalized with much success. In 1977, the first Apple II computer, the first personal computer also, breaks into the market. The most complex appliance to date start unstoppable expansion in all areas of our life. Then, since the 70s, especially the end of it, all areas of life, leisure, education, labor, militarization, etc. are digitalized. All of them are sharing the mediation of the computer. A computer that, from its earliest beginning, has its own vowels linked to the video game. This new digital space creates new opportunities for the game according to the different facets of human evolution. Thus, this digital space becomes an indissoluble new game space in words of McKinsey work. The expansion of this new re-gamification is now unstoppable, not as a new phenomenon but an unstoppable digital resurrection of a human characteristic mute for about a century because this industrial era. As we mentioned above, a new country and its research and development, but also with therefore this ability to destroy an inherent phenomenon to the human being as the gamification can be seen now it like something new when it always been here. A native gamification or naturally gamification now extended by the use of new technologies. There are some differences between natural or native gamification given since the beginning of humanity and the new current forced gamification, ludictatorship, the markets are trying to impose through its centralization, institutionalization and instrumentalization of recreational tools on workplaces or product purchases. A clear example of this is the label "Everything Will Go Well", or in Spanish "Todo va a ir bien", that Bitun Games placed in Cuatro Caminos, Madrid, in an attempt, according to members of the company, of introducing dynamic entertainment into arid environments. Perhaps because the situation in Spain and a neighborhood with a high penetration of immigration, as the Cuatro Caminos is in Madrid, this phrase, this sentence, can be interpreted as a gesture of irony, quite unfortunate, and not as a benefactor or entertainment dynamic. This is what usually happens when the gamification is applied from the top to the bottom, and not perhaps we should generate the rules of every social game, from a democratic way involving everyone and from bottom to the top. If self-satisfaction or self-fulfillment in word of Maslow arise from the accumulation and development of certain vital aspects, among which include an attractive, well-paid and creative job, now this self-fulfillment is replaced by a mechanical imposed forced gamification from above, which try to generate into the employee or customer as applicable something we could name artificial happiness. That is, When you use a tool like gamification to induce desired behaviors without discussing the reason of such behavior must be changed, or you are not allowing the rule of games were discussed by every person involved, then you are introducing this behavior change through something similar to a kind of ludictatorship. That is why gamification becomes a political and ethical, but has great relevance today almost exclusively in academic, business and marketing. You should start taking into public space social and participatory. The purpose of gamification, like any other tool, should be of service to enhance citizen participation, decision making of human resource working in companies or institutions, and ultimately in the rational distribution of power. Returning to the everyday situation, I want to emphasize on working constantly on resolving this kind of issues, small or large, that surround us in an attempt to democratize the rules of the game, the rule of the system in which we live. On the first example, the situation narrated my father about this problem to read he has. In this case, I tried to merge its good relationship with television using series in original version with subtitles, something not very common in Spain. In recent months, I think he reads more than any time in his life. He has also learned a few words in English and values more the original version performance. In the second case, despite the terrible image over the packaged tobacco covers, we see that the fear of death is not enough reason for a smoker to keep the habit. On the contrary, their opinion is we need something or any reason to die of. Reading about the problem caused by smoking, I could find out that the average life in Spain, because tobacco consumption is reduced by 9 years. So I thought it best to work on positive reinforcement rather than the negative one. Then I took pictures of other friends and sticker printing on a stick paper to put over the disgusting image, trying to create a real guilt trip for this friend. The third case, about something basic, a personal task management, about our inability to admit our own limitation. In my case, I thought it should parameterize the tasks depending the requiring efforts to finish each one, so that I could choose easier on those times I feel myself less vigorous. Despite having many different task manager softwares, none of them allows me to set how hard it can be to do a task compared with another. This helps me to be more effective. On the fourth case, I mean something very simple, such the food waste around us. It can be in a restaurant or in a plane. The fact is a gesture almost stupid, and that's not about to speak about compassion or anything, but simply I'm talking about a complementary gesture can help other people. A gesture that breaks the same string what made us to see the Western food in some kind of normal thing. And I can say in all my travels I saw no one around me keep leftover food. And this is why I recommend storing food in the reused and unopened containers to give it to people in need. And it's a first step in breaking the chain of waste food. Of course, there are so many ways to do that. In the fifth problem, it was the suffering of my fellow from the finance department of my own company, wasting such a huge number of hours to generate a report which allows him to obtain conclusion about our customers' satisfaction. So I decided to make real-time representation of our clients in a kind of solar system, so that customers appear as planets of different sizes, depending on the average turnover. Further or closer, depending on the rate of project request. By clicking on each planet, you could extend this information with real data, so in less than 2 minutes you could notice a start map on the relationship that our customer had with our company. The conclusions. at conference and documentation I usually study about gamification, I can see two different bad tendencies about gamification, which are repeated too often. The first is to use the term gamification for things that really are something else: data visualization, urban intervention, etc. The other is trying to use gamification when another solution could work just as well or better. I want to highlight elements that can maximize the use of gamification and should not to be underestimated when it comes to carrying out a project of gamify an application, a marketing campaign, etc. The first one is about redesigning and hacking. Many authors agree that the hybridization through hacking acts are an endless source of imagination and therefore innovation. Our brain is designed to design, be alert, and try to redesign and improve our environment because it's a good exercise for gamificators. Data visualization. The eyesight is our primary sense and not for nothing. Most of the processing load of the brain is due to the interpretation of image, which is why all our attempts to technological improvement in this direction want to represent our environment and even our future project not yet realized. Visualize in our mind is almost equivalent to comprehend. With the image we share what we think. If a picture speaks 1,000 words, a data visualization speaks terabytes of data amount. Open data. Basically, help other people by sharing your information from them. When they will open their information, this will help you. The power of goodness. This may be more difficult to understand because of the relativity of good and evil in our society. However, some of these manifestations of good and evil have been translated in terms of karma in some internet and social applications. We have seen about it on internet news groups, even on games like Fable. I think we have to act in a different way if we think this can be positive and turn into a kind of power with significant contagion effect. For example, when a person is the first to collect the feces of her dog in a neighborhood where people usually don't do that, then she provokes a short circuit in their environment that motivates most of the people to start doing the same thing. Fifth, positive emotional commitment. We see campaign of terror and fear to help us to avoid lots of bad things or unhealthy things. However, it's much better to appeal to positive emotion such as love and affection, many more needed and good considered by every of us. Folk theories speak about we need reminders to change our behavior, and it is better to use positive reminders than negative. The sixth and the last one, the intimate parameterization. It is good to make a criticism that allows us to know ourselves better before accepting the recommendation of others, because by accepting our weak points and how they can influence us, then we can to manage and design solutions for ourselves and others. Perhaps now more than ever, we think as ideas are more meaningful. We are absolutely homo ludens. Notice that the game has a role in all facets of our lives, and the main concept of the gameplay is integrated into our existence. I also want to emphasize that the gamification is a natural process. I understand that the emergence of a country like the United States, which gave name to this phenomenon around 2010, during the 20th century, was closely related to its industrial development, and more specifically to Fordism, and that such development was causing a de- or un-gamification on its society. It is normal now, with the natural reflowering of gamification stimulated by the digitalization, the digitization, makes the term seem new, but it's not. Every tools or devices that are placed at our disposal are not per se good or bad. Gamification can be used in so many ways. We can try to gamify peace keeping processes, but also we are gamifying war, the benefits of healthy eating, but also trying to evade our responsibilities with social and labor gamification closer to a concept of ludictatorship.